Hello, everybody. Welcome to Women Are, a panel show featuring a lot of creative professionals talking about the ups and downs of their careers, all sorts of different careers. And today is one that I'm very excited about. Not that I'm not excited about the other ones, but I say every week it's my favorite. Okay, I'm going to continue. This is going to be my favorite week ever. But we do have amazing women here who have made some board games I'm sure that you have enjoyed. And if you have not yet, you will definitely want to pick them up after we had this discussion. First of all, before we get to that, I do want to urge everyone to vote. So tomorrow I'm feeling a little bit weird because it is kind of like hump day in a way. And I'm not going to prolesticize anyway. I'm just going to tell you as a citizen, please vote. You can, in fact, register to vote on election day in the following states. And I will say them because if you feel like you're too late, you can go tomorrow and still register and vote the same day in the states of Alaska, California, Colorado, Connecticut, Hawaii, Idaho, Illinois, Iowa, Massachusetts, Maryland, Minnesota, Michigan, Montana. What is NV? Whatever NV is. New Hampshire, Rhode Island, Utah, Vermont, Washington, Wisconsin, Wyoming, and Washington, D.C. So please, whatever issue motivates you, please get out there. And I know that some people say, hey, it doesn't matter either way. It's going to be the same. It's not. I think we can really truly say that I'm sure you as a person have one issue that you can at least really, really advocate for and decide, because there are very stark differences between the candidates out there. And that it's Nevada. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Britt Wiseman, my producer, who spelled out Nevada in the Google Doc I'm looking at. All right, so this week we feature board game designers. And this is a field I think is particularly dominated by male creators and the idea of sort of male creativity kind of ruling the roost. And I am so excited to bust that wide open with not only these four women, but the amazing breadth of female creativity in the board game space that we are going to talk about and hopefully you explore after this, and maybe yourselves. Every week we give $750 to a charity that ties into the area that we're talking about. This week it will be takethis.org. Their mission is to decrease the stigma and increase the support for mental health in the game enthusiast community and inside the gaming industry, which I think is a wonderful goal. And it seems like an amazing charity for you guys to consider if you are thinking about end of the year charitable donations, as always. Okay, so let's meet our four panelists. I'm going to ask you guys to introduce yourself and say something brief about yourself, even if it's just ice cream preferred flavor. Starting with, let's start with Victoria. My God, I'm so sorry, Victoria. We've been talking and I.
Oh no, it's okay. My sister's name is Valerie. It's always confusing.
Did your parents really like the V letter? Because it's a good letter. It's very simple.
Yeah. They were trying to go with a pattern, and I'm sure that Veronica was a backup name.
Valeria could be one, and that
is another option.
Anyway, Victoria, could you introduce yourself to the chat and tell us about your work?
Hi, chat. So my name is Victoria Kanya, and I am a game designer. I designed Gladius. It's a game where you play as Roman spectators who bet on and rig the gladiatorial games. Oh, I actually have it here. I forgot. I just saw it over here. And I also design digital games, and I work at Wizards of the Coast, where I am a producer.
Amazing. I've gotten a couple of loot boxes from Wizards of the Coast, and I gleefully open them. I love free stuff. Okay, so I'm not asking for free stuff. I'm just saying, oh, free stuff came. And my other friends are like, why don't you get free makeup? I'm like, I don't need makeup. I mean, I probably do, but I can pay. Anyway, next we'll talk to Elizabeth Hargrave. Elizabeth, can you introduce yourself?
Hello, I'm Elizabeth Hargrave. I am the designer of Wingspan, and this summer Mariposas just came out, and I have a little 18-card game called Tussie Mussy.
Ooh, I am excited to pick that up. For Tessa, could you tell the audience a little about yourself? Also, Elizabeth is very humble. What award did you just win? Could you just tell everybody about it? Could you drop some hot brags on the audience about how actually iconic and amazing you are? Just,
So Wingspan has won many awards, including the Kenner Spiel is probably the one that you're talking about.
Yes, the Oscar of the board game. So yes. So you're a superstar, and I'm so honored you're here, as well as I'm honored that Tessa is here. Tessa, can you tell the audience a little bit about yourself?
Hello, my name is Tessa Elise. I am a designer who's based in Georgia, but now in Seattle, and I have Book of Villainy, Wicked and Wise, and Mansplaining coming up, so look out for that.
Cannot wait for mansplaining. I want to hear that one. I want to hear more about that one. And last but never, also for Tessa just moved to Seattle. And from personal experience, I know Seattle is a hotbed of board game activity. I know we don't have in-person stuff anymore, but if you guys have any tips for Tessa about food or anything, go to her Twitter and just give her some recs, okay?
Yes.
And last but not least, Susan McKinley-Ross is here. Susan, would you tell the audience a little bit about yourself?
Hi, I'm Susan McKinley-Ross. I design toys and games. I've licensed over 50 products, and I'm best known for designing Quirkle. It's been described as Scrabble with shapes and colors, and it's been very well received. It was played on tabletop. That was very exciting. Yeah.
Oh,
And then-
tabletop.
Yeah. And then another game I designed that's been very popular is called Hoot Owl Hoot. And you have little baby owls that it's cooperative, and you're trying to get the owls back to the nest before the sun comes up.
I saw that when I was researching you, I said that and I immediately bought it because my daughter loves board games and I know that she will die to move little baby owls around. She will love it. So very cute. Thank you all for being here. This is going to be a great discussion. And I think that I would love to just open with, when did it occur to you that, hey, I could make a board game? When did that occur to you, Victoria?
Yeah, so I got into board games in a really weird way where I was trying to help somebody else get into games. That's actually how a member of BTS got into their group, where he was like, "Oh, I'm escorting my friend to an audition," and then he became a star. I think it was V, a part of BTS.
What?
But anyways, yeah, my story's not as cool as that. I'm not part of BTS or anything. But yeah, so my partner, he really wanted to get a job in the games industry and like learn more about how to do that. And at the time I was going to NYU, and NYU has a really strong connection to the games industry because they have a game program. And they were actually running this festival called Tribeca Games, where Riot was coming, and they were talking about how they make League of Legends. So it was an all-day event where they brought like 50 people from their office, and like I got to watch and see how they make the game. And we finally talked to one of their game designers, Stone LeBrandy, at the end. And we were like, hey, if we want to get into games, what should we do? And he said, just try making a game with cards. If you start from there, learn how to do systems design, and then move on. So we started trying to make a bunch of different games, and we had varied results. And the one that really stuck was Gladius. And after that, we thought, okay, well, we could probably never pitch this to publishers because we don't know who they are. What if we just make them ourselves? Because there's some people in New York who have launched games on Kickstarter. Maybe we could do that. And so we went on a path, and we recently raised over $96,000 on Kickstarter this past March for our game.
Amazing. I'd like to talk about that a little bit more because having been involved in Kickstarters, Kickstarters have transformed the board game industry, obviously. So we'll talk about that a little bit later, but also how hard it is to run a Kickstarter.
Yeah.
So let's save that for a little bit later. For Tessa, when did you kind of stumble upon the idea I can make a game?
So it actually happened at the same time that I stumbled upon hobby games, because I've been a gamer all my life, but I only knew kind of the mass market games of Monopoly and Risk. And it wasn't until about 3 years ago that me and my two other friends, we would get together and just play these games, and we started to branch out and realize how big the board game market was. And both of my friends are also creative ladies. And one of them was just like, you know what? I'm going to make a game about being in space. And I was just like, I didn't know that you could make games until now. I kind of just thought two stores got together and they birthed the game, and that's how it happened. But after they said that, I was just like, well, theoretically, if I made a game, what would it be about? And that just spiraled the what if train of thought until I made a game.
No, I love that. I love that because honestly, I'm a pretty analytical person, but it never occurred to me either that there are people who make I think we take a lot of things for granted that are kind of at the roots of things. My daughter actually inspired me to think deeper in life. So she's like, how do they make toilet paper? I'm like, I don't know. I have no idea. So like frequently now we just watch little videos of it. And I think especially since board games are a big part of my life, the fact that I never really thought about the mechanics is embarrassing, but also it opens up a whole possibility of creativity that anybody can actually, you know, you don't have to have programming experience or whatever. You just have to be curious and have an idea. And I think that's really brilliant about this industry. Elizabeth, what came first, the chicken or the egg in that? Were you loving birds first or?
Yeah. I mean, I think for me, the thing that planted the seed of, oh, there are people that make the games was that I had a friend who was a playtester for a friend of his out in California, which I learned years later was that he had been playtesting Pandemic, which went on to become a major game.
That's a good one. Yeah.
Yeah, it was, I really started designing Wingspan, but it came out of a conversation with some friends that I game with a lot. We had been playing games together for 5 or 10 years at that point, and we're getting really sick of the themes of all the games we were playing. Like, we loved the mechanics in the games, but like, we don't care about castles and trains and, you know, all these like classic themes that a lot of the games coming out of Europe had. So I was like, what would it look like to have a game about something I actually enjoy? So yeah, I was a birder and just started playing around with some of the mechanics from games that I like, but putting birds in their place.
Yeah. And so the mechanics, the idea of birds influenced the design of the game, or would you say that the design came first and you're like, oh, I could put you know, I don't know if that makes sense, but yeah, was it the skinning on the mechanic of the game that kind of inspired you first? Or what did you take the idea of birds? I'm like, I'm going to build a game around the funnest way to play with birds.
I would say it started with birds, and I really started thinking about like all the economics that are in a lot of games, and like, you know, supply and demand, and we need resources to build other things, and like, what would those resources be in a world that, you know, in a board game that was about birds? Okay, so birds need things like seeds and bugs to eat, and so sort of spiraling out from that basic concept, how it should all fit together.
Yeah. Susan, could you talk about how you have 50 products. Have you always been an inventor? Is this something that you've done since birth? And how is it that board games attracted your imagination?
I'm really lucky because I worked in toys, and the design timeline for toys is not as long as it is for games. So that's why the product count is so high. You know, I don't know if I've always been an inventor, but I worked at a toy company that gave us a chance to turn in ideas. And I got so excited about it. I turned in 200 toy ideas. I was just like, maybe they'll make one of these a product. Maybe they'll make one of these a product. I did. They gave us about a month to think about it, and I could not think about anything else. I was so excited. So I turned in 200 toy ideas, and the woman who founded the company came over and talked to me, and she said, yeah, we need more than just a sentence on each of these. You need to do a page on the, you know, maybe the 15 you like the best sort of thing. And I said, okay, so I worked those up more, and 5 of those became products, which was pretty amazing for someone who had no background in it, but was just excited about the opportunity that was there. So I was really lucky that I was given that. And then they moved me to the product development department and taught me how to do it. So I was very lucky where I was.
Yeah, it seems like my brief encounters with the toy world have been very segmented and very, we know our audience, and they have a lot of rules, especially for gender around children. And so that's really impressive that you were in a position to have sort of those barriers kind of torn down a little bit and just be creative in that way.
And I really credit the company I worked for. It was the toy catalog Hearthsong, and the woman who founded it, Barbara Kane. So it was a company that was founded by a mom. And she loved Waldorf school and Waldorf toys, and she couldn't get them in America at that point. So she started bringing them here. And that was really the basis of what they did. So I think they were open just because of that background.
Yeah. That's a very, the wooden thing. Yeah. I have a lot of those.
I had a moment. So when I was just first getting into board games, and we were just learning about designers, and this was ages and ages ago, and that people design board games. I remember the first time I was putting a game away and I saw a woman's name on the box. I was just like, oh, a woman designed this one. And I hadn't noticed the lack of women. I wasn't aware of the lack of representation in the games I was playing. I just it just really, really stood out in my mind and made me excited. And it wasn't at that point that I was going to be a board game designer or anything. I just was glad to see it. And it turned out I had the name wrong. It was still a man.
Oh no.
I know. Years later, I looked it up on Board Game Geek and I was like, uh-oh.
Oh no, but hey, it still inspired possibility in you.
It did. And then when I had the idea for Quirkle, I was already a toy designer. And so it was very easy to imagine going from toy design to game design, especially because I pitched it to a toy company that also did games.
Yeah.
So I wasn't really stepping out of my industry. I was just taking a little step.
Yeah, exactly. And that's a little bit more doable. I'm going to throw a question just open to the panel. What is the hardest part about making a board game? Is it the play testing? Is it the concept? Like, what do you find the most challenging that you have to work the hardest at in the development of a game?
I think different pieces are hard in different ways. Like finding enough people to play test your game can be really challenging depending where you live. And
Really?
like not burning people out. Well, now it's not hard for me to get people to play test my game, but starting out. And even just like finding the design community where you live and tapping into that can be.
Have you found the COVID has actually brought people together a little bit more and like gathered them in like Discord channels or anything? Or do you think it's more scattered it because we don't have the in-person con kind of community, which really had brought people together before?
I mean, there are people who are really taking advantage of the fact that everyone is online now to play test their games on things like Tabletop Simulator and Tabletopia. And those two platforms just like I don't love them. And my process before was that I have a group of designers that I get together with here in DC once a week. And we can't do that in-person testing anymore.
Yeah.
So for me, the pandemic's made it a lot harder. I think for some people that didn't have that strong in-person playtesting already going, then like it feels like they're getting more done because they can do it online.
Yeah. I mean, it's so interesting the more I learned about it, the more how important the debugging stage of a board game is. And it's actually a benefit of the process that you don't have to come out with this fully fledged perfect thing. You have to work. Victoria, how long did you play Gladius? I mean, how long did you play test that game before you ended up saying, okay, we're ready for a Kickstarter?
Yeah, so we started working on it for a couple of months, and then we said, okay, we're gonna launch this on Kickstarter. And it was funny because at the time we didn't know anything, right? We're like, oh, look, here's our prototype that we've put on some paper, and there are no images or anything like that, and we could do a Kickstarter. Let's target next year. But it ended up taking a lot longer than a year. I think in total it took us like 2.5 to 3 years to actually launch the Kickstarter. Wow. And I think the thing is, if you pitch it to a publisher, the publisher will do most of the work. But I had to do all the work. So we had like over 46 pieces of unique art. So I had to find the artist. I had to do the art direction. I had to go to like over 35 conventions and, demo and playtest Gladius with over 1,000 people, which, yes, like what Elizabeth said is true. It's one of the hardest parts of making a game is finding playtesters. I literally had to go find these conventions and like ask people to playtest. And it was hard in the beginning because the game didn't have any art. People have to use their imaginations to see what it could become. But yeah, towards the end, when we finally got into the PAX South Tabletop Indie Showcase, which is, it's really hard because they give you a booth. They only choose like 5 people. They showcase you and stuff. And we got rejected in the past. When we finally made it to that stage, we were like, okay, well, we made it here. We won like several awards and made it into many indie showcases. I think that now we've done everything that we can do to launch our Kickstarter and make sure that it has the best chance of being successful. But yeah, overall, like the getting the game made part is hard.
Yeah, no, I mean, that actually segues into my next question for Tessa. I'm going to direct it to you first, but I want everybody to address it. what skills other than board game design do you find the most important when you're in this industry? Clearly perseverance, but that's not, or business acumen. Like, what are the things that has surprised you about the industry and making of a game that you were like, thank goodness I know this, or I wish I had learned this before? For Tessa?
For me, the biggest skill that I've benefited from is listening. And I went to art school, and so I was used to getting critiques on things that I created. So I think that I was able to accept harsh critiques relatively well, and also kind of roll with it and roll it into my prototypes. And I find that when playtesting with others, it can get very hard to separate your emotional reaction to like negative critique, and separating that from like what can actually help make your game into its best form. And so it takes a lot of practice to listen to that and be able to find a way to kind of separate your emotion from that moment so that you can digest that information as it comes. And for me, it's literally writing it down and not really giving a discussion when people are giving feedback, more so letting it be more of a neutral, okay, I understand, or, ask questions to clarify and just write it down, because I know I'm feeling a certain type of way if it's negative feedback, but I also know that they gave me their time. And that was very precious to me. So I might let it sit for an hour, might let it sit for a week, and come back to what I wrote and see, because I take very detailed notes, but see what the feedback was and how they reacted. And that kind of that really helped transform my games, all of them. And it helped me get around my own feelings whenever they would prevent me from hearing the people that were in front of me.
Yeah, I mean, criticism is always hard to take, and especially when you know that everybody's coming from their own point of view and they might not have your best interest in mind when they're criticizing, and they might not be worth hearing, but everybody will at least have something to say to you, and you could take something good from it. And it's really hard to tell yourself intellectually that when you're like dying inside. You just stabbed my baby. Victoria, how did you deal with 1,000 people like rummaging in your underwear drawer and like thinking, okay, oh no, look at it, it's not clean. I mean, that's a horrible analogy. I'm so sorry.
Oh no, it's okay. Yeah, it's funny because so luckily I designed in a duo. So me and my partner, we would take turns demoing the game, where like one person would teach and be like the dealer in a way, and the other person would just observe. And it's funny because he and I are very different. Like for him, he always panics. He's like, oh my God, like my baby's out there and people are telling me she's ugly. And like,
that's true.
For me, I'm like, we need to hear this. We cannot tell them, how the game is supposed to work. We just need to see how they interact. We can't like be overly involved. We just need to know the truth. And I think that I used to do creative writing. And one of the things that you learn from there is that, you just gotta vomit the words on the page and it'll become good later. You need to put something out there, and it's not going to be the best right away. You're going to find it when you develop it. And yeah, there are some games where it's like, wow, somebody had an idea and it was amazing right away. It was perfect or close to perfect. But most of the time, I don't think that's the case. And so I just wanted to have faith in the process. And I knew that all the harsh criticism that we got in the beginning would help us make a better game. And as we went along, the criticisms started going away because we had figured out how to adjust the game design to make the most optimal experience that we wanted.
You just talked to my soul a little bit. You're not only that, but your attitude of like, okay, let's just get like, that is so inspiring as someone who I wilt under criticism. And but the fact that your grit and your flexibility and you're considering everything as a step to improve is so inspiring, and something that everybody could take in any creative field forward.
Thank you.
Elizabeth, I don't know as much about your background. Were there any things that you, before you started designing games, like skills, careers, or just, general life perspectives that you brought to board game design that has helped you not only in the creation, but just the industry of board games?
Yeah, I mean, what Fortessa was saying about the people skills, I think is super important. And I used to run a lot of focus groups. So whenever I go into a playtest, that's like, I feel like I'm drawing a lot on that. But I was also a huge Excel like data analyst geek. And
Oh, cool.
so a lot of the way that I design is just like, you know, to create 170 cards for Wingspan, you gotta like keep them all straight in an Excel spreadsheet. And so that was definitely a set of stuff that transferred over very well for me.
Susan, what about, I mean, toy design clearly has factored into it, but was coming from a business point of view, like something that was, because to me, I think it's very hard, especially if you're a self-starter, like a lot of we are here, kind of doing things on your own. You kind of have this sort of trial by fire, especially on the business side of things. Susan, can you consider yourself a leg up on that, being within a company, or did that kind of delay you from doing your own thing?
So I wasn't in a company at that point. The company I worked for had left, and I started my own company licensing things.
Mm-hmm.
And when I started my business, I could kind of go into arts and crafts design or toy design. And I looked at the two industries, and it seemed like the arts and crafts was more dominated by women designers, but they also were treated as if just loving their job was pay enough.
Mm-hmm,
And
mm-hmm.
I felt like I was watching their passion be taken advantage of. And I looked at the toy industry, and it seemed like it was dominated more by men, but they were also, you know, I have a job, I like it, but I expect to get paid for it, and I expect to be paid in a, you know, by a certain amount sort of thing. And it felt like it was better established that way. And that was part of why I chose toys over crafts, because I felt it was an industry that wasn't just going to take advantage of people's passion. So I think that then when I moved into games, I also moved into games in the family market, which is largely the toy market. So it was, again, just the same thing. But I definitely made that decision at the beginning because of how I felt the two markets were acting.
Yeah. No. I mean, there's, I mean, I know Victoria was telling us about like how she had to do everything herself, and you can go to a producer or a publisher to do all that work, but then you give up so much creative control and IP control. And also you have someone else making decisions that you might not be as independent. So of course there's always that constant, like creativity as commodity. How much can I give up and how much am I getting in exchange? And sometimes it's zero, and sometimes and you just kind of have to go with your gut. That's why I never sold the guild, because there was never enough money for me, like, okay, I can walk away from this, right? Or enough vision on their part that I feel like my baby is in your good hands, right? And the same thing with anything you create.
And I'm enough of a control freak that I really want my baby to look like my baby, and I want it, you know, that was just so important. So yeah, that was it.
No, it is. I mean, if you're a creator, a true creator, like some people are okay with just kind of like, here's a baby with no face, and put a face on it. I want to make my baby's face.
I do think though, if you find a good fit with a publisher, that like, I feel like Wingspan is 10 times more beautiful than I even could have conceived of making it myself, right? Yeah. Like, so it can go both ways.
No, it's such a relief it's like a creative partner. Like, oh my gosh, you made this better because we're writing together. Whew. I do want to ask a question that has to do with specifically being a woman in the board game industry. Because I know that, Victoria, you were alluding to a story that I want you to share, because I just want to know, the culture of board games is very male dominated. And like we all said, like the idea that a woman designed a game was, to me, a little like, oh, but of course, when you think, I think we are cliches are embedded in our heads. Like if I say firefighter, you're going to think of a certain kind of person with a certain color skin, certain height, certain weight. If you think president, we have all these like code words that trigger images in our brain that are generally like not very diverse, right? And so I think one of our tasks in life is to bust those, what somebody's brain will automatically go to when they think of a profession. And that's kind of my mission in life. But in this board game industry specifically, were there any difficulties that you encountered with the culture of board games or in releasing your game because you're a woman? And Victoria, please I want to hear the story.
Oh, yeah, sure. So the biggest challenge with being a woman who wants to play tabletop games, just like playing, and then even further trying to design games, is some people will try to gatekeep you. And that's something that happened to me in the beginning. It was like 2017, and I was so excited because, I had said, oh, I'm going to make a board game, and I had won a scholarship to go to Metatopia, which is a game designer focused convention. And then after that, Gladius made it into the top 16 or like top 8 for this indie game design contest over here in Seattle. So I flew from New York City to Seattle, and also my sister came so we could demo the game to judges and see, maybe if it wins or maybe it doesn't win. But overall, it'd be a cool opportunity. And my co-designer, who's a man, he wasn't able to go. But I'm like, that's okay. I designed this game too. I'm going to show up, and hopefully, it'll be an awesome experience. And overall, it was an awesome experience. There was just one judge who was really, really mean to us. And when we demoed, I thought, oh, okay, maybe he's like a Simon Cowell type judge, maybe he's mean to everybody. But then what ended up happening was, our game won the People's Choice Award. So people voted for us as their favorite game, but we didn't make it into the top 3 for the Game Design Award. And when we were there to support, we were watching like a panel. We were sitting in the audience, watching the judges deliberate about the top 3 games. One of the judges started making fun of us, even though we weren't the topic of conversation, and like making fun of how my sister messed up while demoing the game, like because she didn't know the rules. She was a little bit nervous, and just like criticizing us as people and criticizing our game. And so after that, I remember it was so strange because in the audience, people started coming up to us and apologizing and saying, I'm so sorry that this has happened. I didn't even know these people. And I'm like, if everyone in the audience is apologizing to us, that means it must be bad. And I like remember that day, I almost gave up on game design. I thought like maybe I should just quit if this famous judge is just gonna, make fun of me and like try to keep me out. But then I messaged Elizabeth because I saw her fighting so fiercely for getting more women in game design on Twitter. And I was like, Elizabeth, what should I do? And she basically told me like, don't give up. And I'm glad that she told me that because I didn't. I was like, he's upset because I won this award, and I'm just going to go on and do better. So I'm happy that Gladius has funded, and now I work full time in the games industry. I work at Wizards of the Coast. So, you can try to keep women down, but you can't stop us. We're still going to be here. We're coming.
Oh my God, you're going to make me cry. You're amazing. Oh, that's so amazing. How did your parents raise you to be so amazing? How do I take that and give it to my daughter?
I don't know. I'll ask my mom.
Yeah, ask your mom.
Yeah.
Yeah. How about you guys? Any other experiences that were kind of a setback for you, and how did you get through them? Because just the fact that Victoria mentioned that Elizabeth was really key, and keeping her in this industry is really important, because we're all going to come up against really bad experiences, whatever your gender, but it's how we get through those points that will kind of determine our future. And the fact that she had a mentor, somebody she could reach out to get her over that and realize that she was on the right path, she just should not be punched like that, is really important. How are there other incidents that you guys, other on the panel, could share?
For me, I had a handful of experiences, and the majority of my experiences have been, very welcoming. But I think one of the biggest obstacles that I had, because I was an introvert also, was establishing a network so that I could feel safe whenever I went to conventions. Because whenever I started going to conventions, a lot of the time I would be by myself and I would demo by myself. And it was always a bit difficult to just get people to come over just because I was an introvert. Mm-hmm. But when I did get people over, it was almost impossible for me to establish boundaries. And I think maybe it was a year and a half ago, but I was at a pretty huge convention, and I had the worst playtesting experience I'd ever had, because three guys sat down, and the first one, he was a bit belligerent from the get-go, like the first 10 minutes, but like after I explained the game rules before we even went through a full round, he just kept railing in on like different things. Certain things were like graphic design, and it was just like, I don't know if he thought that it was a published game. He was just mad about it. Whatever it was, he kept going until finally he was just like, I'm beating a dead horse. I'll just go. Got up, left.
What?
So then I had to like figure out how to like keep it going. I was like, okay, now this is a 3-player game. It changes the layout a little bit, but we're just gonna go. So we went through, and like as we were playing through my game, and it was my first game, Book of Villainy, these two guys were kind of going back and forth about things that they didn't like or didn't, you know, they thought could be improved, which would be fine, but some of them were very subjective. Like they were just like, oh, this game could be something. Maybe I could see it a little bit if you put a little bit of elbow grease. And the other guy's like,
What?
elbow grease? Try a lot of elbow grease and some hard work. And they were saying it like it was a compliment.
To your
And I was
face?
like, yeah, to my face.
Wow.
And I was like, yeah, okay. Well, I've been working on this for a year and a half, so cool. And then they kept going back and forth. The one guy kept referring to his bowel movement and how he needed the game to go faster so he could go to the bathroom.
What?
Great detail about that. He like we finished the game, and instead of going to the restroom, he spent the next 15 minutes talking about how he wanted to get through feedback so he could go to the bathroom. And it was just like, I don't know what to do with this day. It was all over the place. But that was hands down the worst. And, you know, random incidents like that would happen where, you know, it's guys like that or guys who think they're helping. They're the nice guy and they want to sit there and coach me through, you know, being a newbie. And it's just like, I wasn't able to protect myself and establish a boundary for a while, but I put myself out there, especially on Twitter, and, you know, tried to make my face seen so that I could learn people through the gaming. The gaming community is very strong on Twitter. So I would put myself out there, you know, and some designers took me under their wings, as every introvert needs a good extrovert to take them under their wings. Carla Kopp, Elizabeth Hargrave, even there are other people in Georgia and the gaming groups there that really just looked out for me and would help me introduce me to different groups. And it was through those people that I was able to really go to conventions and see friendly faces. And whenever some weird incident would happen, I would be able to, you know, kind of bounce back and go recover.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, that the great thing is about the growth of the board game industry is that it is much more diverse. And the fact that maybe 10 years ago, if that had happened to you, you wouldn't have had a network of other women or other people. Like, it doesn't necessarily have to be women providing social, you know, safety nets for women, but it tends to be, you know, and I think that's something we can all work on, just having broadening that. But Elizabeth, I have to tell you, when I looked at your website for, you know, dream guests for this panel, I was so inspired by the fact that prominently on your website is a list of women and non-binary game designers, and also Black voices in board games, which is where I got Tessa's name. So I want to ask you, like, what inspired you to do that? Is that something from experience? You were like, I have power in this world now. This is what I want to really focus on. What inspired that for you?
I mean, the direct inspiration is when Wingspan really started taking off last year. I was doing a lot of interviews and people kept introducing me or describing me as one of the only women in the board game industry, which is just false, right? But I decided to start collecting names and be like, no, here are other people you should have on your podcast. I'm not the only one. And it just kept snowballing. So now it's like over 200 people on there, on that list, that with published games mostly. So that's cool. But, you know, the other part of it is just, for me, when I started going to game design events, and this is less true now, but in, you know, 2016, 2017, it was very common that I would go to an event and I would be the only woman. And it's hard. And at events that I have been to where there have been like a breakfast or something for all the women to meet up, we did this last year at Unpub, it makes a difference, because if you're in a room of 200 designers and there are 20 women there, you don't necessarily see each other throughout the day. You're sort of scattered around, and it can feel very isolating. But if you've sort of gotten together at the beginning of the event and built that network a little bit, it really makes a difference. And so the list on my website is another one of those things of like, no, I just want to remember that everyone's out there. I'm not the only one.
No, it's such a deep, really amazing list. And I will continue to use it as a resource for board games that I buy, but also just inspiration that this is a changing industry. This is a growing industry, and it's growing in a way where we're all, it's a lot more reflective of the board game population, which is very diverse and more diverse as we go forward. So thank you so much for that. Definitely check out her website, you guys, for that resource if you're interested in discovering new voices and new games. We're going to get to audience questions in a minute, just after a couple more questions. I just want to remind you, if you put it in the chat, the mods are instructing you how to phrase it. So you get your question put in here. I usually talk too much because these panelists are so interesting, but I will try to get through as many as I can. Susan, I do want to talk to you about, and you guys could jump in as well, starting your own company. When did you know that you were ready to start your own company? And that is a really big step. And it's also a leap into business, which I've learned in my past is a whole nother shebang from being a creator. Victoria, you do the same thing. For Tessa, you have your own things, and you guys are working in bigger companies. I'd love for you to talk about that as well. But Susan, how was it creating your own company, and how scary was it? And what were some of the things that you learned early on? You're like, whoa, I didn't know this part.
Well, I had a job I absolutely adored. I worked at Hearthsong, and I was a toy and game and craft designer, not games, toy and craft designer. I loved it. My company got bought and moved out of the area. It was the nicest layoff ever. They gave us plenty of time. I could move, but I didn't want to move. And so I had to look for a job, and I was just depressed because I wanted this job. It's like, no. So I was really lucky. My husband encouraged me to start my own company. He said, the toy company you're working for works with outside designers. Why don't you just become one of their outside designers? And that seemed really risky to me, but I had the luxury of a partner who had a good job and insurance, and I was able to start, and that's really luxurious. That isn't something everybody has. So I got to start that way. I started taking more art classes and woodworking classes so I could learn to make my own prototypes. And I think the thing that was most important that I learned fairly early on is that you still have to say no to some things. Like when you're first starting a company, you can't believe that you're doing it, and you'll take any job and you'll just, yeah, let me do it. And you want the experience. And there are just some that you have to learn how to say no. And this is not the best use of my time. And that was that. It's so amazing to have opportunities, but then you have to figure out which ones are really worth pursuing. And
that's so brilliant. I mean, I have to tell you, November is my no month. I had to tell myself, because I have spent all summer doing favors for other people, podcasts, periods is not, I mean, clearly doing this panel was a great use of you guys' time, but it's very hard. It's so easy to give ourselves up when we're independent business people, right? And we're all in a sense, we don't have office jobs, but some of us might have a bigger job. Like I'd love to hear from Tessa and Victoria, but at the end of the day, if you are a self-employed, then you're your own person, and your time is so valuable. And yet it's so easy to give up because you're not as loyal to yourself as you would be to an actual boss. So November is my mantra this month. And that's really good to hear, because if you have your eye on a long-term goal, you can't let short-term things pile up and steal your time.
Yeah, that's it exactly. And it took me a while to figure that out. I wasted time on some projects that just weren't going to go anywhere. And then I figured out what I needed to really focus on. But I had to just work on my designs and licensing them, because I started this way before Kickstarter existed. So while I could possibly have produced Quirkle and had it in my garage, that just wasn't the path I was going to go down. So the idea has always been to license the designs and have continuing income from the things I've licensed, and and that's worked really well. And then you get to work on something new, and the publisher takes over, and they do their expertise of manufacturing and safety and shipping and billing and advertising and all that side that isn't my expertise and isn't my joy. I like the designing part. So that was the other thing, is I realized that's what I had to focus on.
No, it's totally valuable as an independent business person. Victoria and Fortessa, now you guys work for Wizards, and now Fortessa, you just started working for Funko. How now you're pretty new in that. Victoria, what do you do at Wizards, and how do you find working simultaneously at a big corporation and a small corporation? Where do you see the advantages? Do you like straddling those two worlds, or
Oh yeah. It's a lot of fun for me because before I got into games full time, I used to be a management consultant. So which is very different. And it was like being a management consultant was a lot of fun because they take people who are really young and ambitious and they let you do stuff like, talk to executives and do important work for them. I used to go on the train from New York City to Rhode Island every week, and there'd be like older men who'd be like, "Oh, are you going to college?" And it's like, "No, I'm working on my laptop. I'm doing work trying to, do this org design and like identify $20 million in cost savings. Like I am not going to school."
amazing?
And yeah, so when I love working at a company because I feel like I like the structure of it. I like all the things that you get from working with a big company, but it's fun because on the side, I also have my own little company that I made for Gladius. And it's cool because, when I made Gladius, I didn't even know I was going to make a company. I thought, oh, I'm going to make a game, and making a business was just a thing I had to do on the side for liability reasons, because I learned that in a talk. I'm like, oh shoot, I got to form an LLC.
Always form a corporation to protect yourself from liability. Always do it, guys.
Yeah. So I did it, and it was cool because I got to use a lot of the skills that I had as a management consultant before. And if there was stuff I didn't know how to do, I would just figure it out. Like, oh, okay, well, how am I going to do the P&L for this game? How am I going to do the financial forecast? Well, my friend, she does that, my college roommate, and then we figured it out. We're like, we want this requisite profit margin, and we're going to figure out how much to price the game and how much to charge for shipping and how much money we'll make if we sell X number of units. Like there were a lot of lawyer stuff, like legal agreements. And I'm like, shoot, how do I do that stuff? And, I just like found game lawyers, figured out how to work with them, figured out how to negotiate. So it's a lot of fun because if I didn't do this for my own little company, maybe I wouldn't have those skills, but now I have those skills and it can help me with my day job.
No, I think it's so fantastic because like that was the Achilles heel for me. I had no idea about financials or business, and I got crushed under the weight of them because I wasn't smart enough to try to outsource. So, what Susan said was focus on what you do well, right? And figure out how to do it. And the fact that you had that business background is so important when you start a business, because you can be crushed. I know so many creators who've been taken advantage of or had their dreams fail, not because of the talent, but because of the business know-how. So it really is something, if you're thinking about doing something and creating it and creating commodity around your creativity, just take a couple business classes to know what you don't know. And then that way you can, so half the time you don't even know what you don't know. And that's really the trick. So I would really urge that. Fortessa, you just recently took a job at Funko. What are you going to be doing there? And how is this a new venture for you, working for a bigger company?
Yeah, so previously I was an indie game designer, and I did all of my game design as a hobby while I was working my 9-to-5 jobs in like quality control. And that actually helped really well with game design because it's quality control with the prototypes. But I was able to, in this move to Seattle, also get a job with Funko Games, formerly known as Prospero Hall. So you might see that on the back of boxes. And working with them it's such a different experience, but it's really great because they work as a team and they tackle games as a team. And so when we're working on things, it's just like, it's not just one person taking ownership of a game, but it's everybody contributing, and it's such a fun atmosphere for me.
That sounds great. It sounds ideal. And the fact that those companies are allowing you guys to do your own thing on the side, that's kind of rare in an entertainment industry and stuff like that. So it's really great that you're able to do that. Yes, we have amazing questions, and I want to get to them, guys. Oh boy, I'm almost on time for the first time ever. Just because actually some of your questions are ones I wanted to ask anyway, just to let you know that. Demagipa Photo asks, And this is what we were talking about, we wanted to get to. Kickstarter has seen a rise in publishing independent board games. Do you see that as an indicative of a greater freedom in development or more a result of the limitations of the current game publishing companies? That's very interesting. Elizabeth, do you have an opinion on that?
I mean, I don't think it has to be either or. A lot of publishers are using Kickstarter now too, partly because it's just so risky to print a game. Like you're making this physical product that you're going to have to sell, and Kickstarter allows you to figure out how many people want it before you make it.
Yeah.
So for publishers, it serves that role. And then for people who don't want to go through a publisher, you know, in Victoria's case, she really did all the legwork and was able to do like a publisher level Kickstarter campaign because she was going to the conventions and doing all the demos. But there are also a lot of people who just use it of like, they just want their game to be in the world. They're going to sell 500 copies and they're pleased as punch to just get their game out there to the people that they're able to sell it to. And that's a totally valid use of Kickstarter too. So it's like, it's hard to talk about like, why is Kickstarter what it is? Because it is so many different things.
Mm-hmm. Have you done a Kickstarter for one of your games? Would you want to do one in the future? No.
When I started designing, I assumed I was going to have to, right? Because I didn't know that much about how the industry worked. And I knew that I was seeing a lot of games come out on Kickstarter. And the more I read about how to run a successful Kickstarter, the more I realized I never in a million years ever want to run a Kickstarter. I'm a huge introvert. I don't want to be like going out and hitting all the conventions and having to convince people to buy my game. I mean, now I'm in a totally different situation than I was when I was trying to decide what to do with Wingspan. But it's just like the set of stuff you have to do to run a Kickstarter and to physically make the game, like all the project management stuff and working with the manufacturers. None of that is interesting to me at all. I am super happy to hand it all over to a publisher.
Avoid it if you can. I've done a couple Kickstarters in my life and people are like, why don't you just make a Kickstarter? And like, you don't understand. It is not just like, I'll offer you, a pic. Like you have to get people to print the pictures and sign them and you get them the addresses right. And there's always one person who moves 7 times and is still mad at you that they don't have their picture. And Victoria, how have you, it is a months-long process to satisfy a well-done Kickstarter. Victoria, do you have any nightmare scenarios or how did you deal with a Kickstarter? Because I feel like if anybody could do a Kickstarter well, it'd be you.
Yeah, it was, I went into it knowing that it would be hard. And yes, it ended up being like even harder, all sorts of things that I didn't expect. But I tried to believe in myself where I could, if I don't know how to do it, I could figure it out. And it was really helpful because people like, Jamie Stegmeyer, he writes a blog about, how to run Kickstarters. And there's a strong community of creators where people are trying to figure out how to kickstart their own games and like people who have done it, people who are new to it. And so I was so lucky to have mentors. So my mentors were Runaway Parade Games. So Gwen and Sam, they made a game called Fire Tower. They were in New York City. And we were developing our games around the same time, but they launched a year before us. Mm-hmm. So after they were able to have success, I was able to learn from them. And then there's also Joseph Chen and Justin Faulkner. They made a game called Fantastic Factories, and they actually won one of the contests that we got an award in too. And so from seeing their paths, I was able to figure it out. And whenever there was a moment where it's like, oh my gosh, how do you do testing for this? Where do I buy a barcode? I don't know what's going on. I would just message them and use the collective knowledge of other people to support me. Mm-hmm. I have another game signed with a publisher and I'm like, yes, okay, great. That one will get taken care of. So I think in the future, I'll do a combination of pitch games to publishers and also self-publish some of them. It just depends on which ones I feel like, okay, I need to run this one myself and which ones would be better where the publisher can elevate it to a place that I could never take it.
Yeah. And for Tessa, you said you have a couple of Kickstarters coming next year. Are you going to ping Victoria? Get some tips. You definitely, because I can't even describe to you the nightmares of some Kickstarter situations. Even though we had people helping along the way, Tabletop was, we had a surfeit of finances that we spent other places on another show and everything like that. But wow, fulfillment is just, my God, I never want to put another stamp on an envelope again. Are
I
you
would-
scared or excited? Who do you have helping you with your Kickstarter?
I would never run a Kickstarter myself. All of mine are signed to publishers.
Oh,
So
great.
Yeah. The Book of Villainy, Wicked and Wise is with Weird Giraffe Games. Mansplaining is with Breaking Games, and Book of Villainy is with, I'm blanking, but
It's okay.
they're all three different publishers, and they are in very capable hands, and I'm just looking forward to seeing how they bring them all to life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Susan, have you ever done a you said that you started earlier than Kickstarter, but now your business kind of got up and running and you're self-sufficient enough that you don't have to do Kickstarter? Is it something you don't want to ever do? Or
It doesn't interest me. I'm really happy with the publishers I work with. I'm really happy with just focusing on the design, and I'm really happy having a small company. I eventually hired my husband away from the company he worked for, and so it's just the two of us. And I don't want to be bigger. I don't want to lick all those envelopes or do all that fulfillment. I wouldn't mind if a publisher I worked with did a Kickstarter. I think that'd be pretty interesting. But just for my own strengths, design is what I love, and that's what I want to focus on.
it's amazing. A couple other questions. Let's see. What's a theme or mechanic or genre of game that you'd love to design a game around? I don't know if that's giving away you guys' secrets. That feels like maybe like what's a screenplay you want to write in 5 years? Do you have something where do you have anything to make it a little more general, like something that not necessarily that you would do, but what would you like to see in board games going forward that you don't see enough of or celebrated more? I know that I love co-op games, and for years it was hard. You get Castle Panic and like two other, like most of them are adversarial, but the idea of sitting down and playing co-op games is really exciting for me, as well as kids games. I feel like they're leveling up a lot. What would you like to see going forward in the board game industry that isn't there product wise?
So for me, there's this game designer, Emma Larkins. And so she and I, sometimes we'll come up with like wacky game ideas. And we have this inside joke that we want to make a game that's about the life-changing magic of tidying up. If anyone knows Marie Kondo.
Oh my God.
We're like, what if we what sparks joy? I don't know. We can find out.
Wow, that is such a good idea. Yes, please tell me that, because I love cleaning up. I love organizing. I hate watch that Netflix show about those organizers. It's so bad, but then I couldn't stop watching. I was like, don't make another rainbow. Stop it. I can't stop watching. Anybody else?
There was
go. Protesta, you go.
This is a game that I think I would just make for fun to play with my friends, but I really want to make a deck builder where you build your own K-pop group, and you get to play the companies that are assembling their boy bands, and you can choose to make them solo, or you have to make them a group, but you have until the 7-year curse to get your group together and make all the money in hands. So I don't know when that's gonna happen, but I want that.
Sold. Susan?
I really enjoy cooperative games. I love competitive games too, but cooperative it's a different flavor and a different feeling. And I think that's a genre that hasn't been like I want an Elizabeth Hargrave cooperative game.
Yes, please.
I want something that isn't, Castle Panic or Forbidden Island. I love those games. I've played them. I adore them. But I want something that stretches the genre in a different direction.
Yeah.
And
Forbidden Island is great, but it feels like eating glass to me. Is that a weird thing to do? I love playing it, but it's so tense. Like I think it's a time limit. I just get really anxious. So I'm like, let's play it again. But I'm like this. It's definitely not a relaxing co-op game. Maybe it's everybody cleaning up a room together. Maybe. Elizabeth, anything you have to comment?
I always say I want to make a game about mushrooms because that's my other big hobby other than birding.
Oh.
But I also just want to observe, I feel like part of the reason that the game industry was in a rut with themes for so long was that it was only white guys making the games. Mm-hmm. And the idea of a Marie Kondo game or a K-pop game, would not have come out of the white guys that were designing games 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And those are games that would bring more people in as gamers that aren't necessarily attracted to the games that are on offer from that older crowd. Like, I just think that the diversity in game designers as that takes off is going to help feed into more diversity in gamers,
diversity
and like become sort of a positive feedback loop.
Yeah, for me, like, I mean, I got into board games just because Will Wheaton introduced me to them, because I was always like a Hasbro gamer as a kid, but I never knew about all these amazing games. And when I would go to conventions, we'd play them at night. And when I started my company, I said, oh, let's do tabletop. And I was a creator of that show with him, but I never went to set after the first season because I knew how hard it was to get into games, because it's intimidating. And if you sit down and try to read a manual, everyone's leaving by the time you're done, right? So like, how do we make it easy? And I would never watch the gameplay. I would watch the edits. And then when I was confused, I would be like, we have to stop here and explain a rule. And so that's why tabletop is so, it's because of me. I'm like, I don't understand where you went from this to this, and I don't know this game at all. So the idea was to make it as easy and accessible as possible to learn how to play the game as you watch people. And those kind of tools in opening the door with theme, but also ease of use is really important, I think, to share this love of a hobby that's not as easy and don't have as much visibility in the world, right? So very cool. Okay, a couple other, we'll do 2 questions quickly. Mama Geek, Queen Geek asks, how do you legally protect your game while it's in prototyping and playtesting, which I think is really important. How do you protect it when you're going around showing it to so many people? Is that even possible?
So I would say the best way to protect it is by showing it to people and like documenting it online, keeping an online diary, because the gaming community, while huge, is also very, very small and tight knit. And when somebody steals something, it catches like wildfire. Everybody will hear about that usually. So it doesn't happen very often. And when it does, it's highly publicized. So really your best thing is to get your idea out there, get people playing it, because it's a lot of hard work to create a game and to follow through with an idea. So even if somebody had the inkling to take your idea, they would have to put in so much work that it doesn't even make sense for them to steal it.
Very well put. Very well put. Okay, 2 last questions. What is Michelle Ridge asks, what is something you think you waste too much of your time on as a board game designer and wish could change, other than Twitter? I added that part. What do you think?
Twitter would be such a good answer.
I know, Twitter's just a good. Yeah, I'm sorry, I stole it. What's the time sink that it feels like doesn't pay off as much as you probably should?
Oh, that's rough. I was going to say, I spent a lot of time, when you make the prototype, there's a lot of printing and cutting and sleeving, but it's very important to do that because then you can't even have a game. So,
yeah.
I will say I have learned to allow my prototypes to be uglier for longer. Like spending a lot of time on illustrations and graphic design up front before you even know how the game is going to work is usually a waste of time.
Oh, that's really interesting.
Especially if you already know that you have people who are willing to play test it for you, then you really don't have to worry about making it pretty because they'll play what you give them, right? If you're going to a public venue where you don't know anyone and you have to attract people to your table, you have to make it a little pretty to make people willing to sit down. Mm-hmm. But Daniel Solis talks about you want your prototype to look roughly equivalent to the stage your game is at. So if you are just starting and your prototype is beautiful, like number 1, you wasted a bunch of time because everything is going to change anyway. But number 2, people are going to have higher expectations for what they're about to play test than what you're offering them.
Oh, that's really interesting. Okay, so our last question as we wrap this panel, and I want to thank you guys. I'm going to give you an opportunity to plug all your work at the end. But since it's the holiday season, and I'm always asked this question just because of being involved with tabletop, but what is the one game that you guys would recommend other than your own? And go ahead and recommend your own. What game that would you recommend to introduce to people who, if you're not going to get getting together necessarily with your family this holiday season, but what would you gift your family for quarantine pleasure that would be easy for them to pick up and introduce them to the love of board games? Victoria?
Oh, yeah, sure. For me, I think there's a tie between 2. One is called Fire Tower. It's a game where you are manning a fire tower and you're trying to burn the other one to the ground. but it's really easy because like the pieces, like the way that you play, it's so simple. Anyone can play it. And the other one is Abandon All Artichokes. So that one's designed by Emma Larkins, and it's a deck destruction game where you're trying to abandon all artichokes as it is described. And these are also both games that are designed by women. So
Oh, amazing.
I highly recommend.
Amazing. Susan, what would you recommend?
For a long time, it was Telestrations, which I still think is a great game if you have a group of people. But I've really enjoyed Just One. It's kind of like Telestrations or Taboo. It won the Spieljars this year, and
Last year.
Last year. It won last year.
It's been one since. Yep.
This year doesn't count as a year.
No. Time has lost all meaning. It's fine.
But it's a game where you're trying to get one. It's cooperative, so it's all play all the time, which is good for people who aren't used to playing games. They don't have to sit out and wait. And you're trying to get one player to guess a clue, but you can't have, in the clues you give them, you can't have any repeating clues. There can only be just one of the clues you give them.
Oh, interesting.
And it's really clever. It's really fun, and everybody's involved all the time, which is a good thing for gamers.
Absolutely. For Tessa, what would you recommend?
Oh, I would definitely recommend The Mind. That was a really good hit with my friends, and I have a lot of non-gaming friends, so I found that one I could explain in less than 5 minutes, and a lot of them just went and picked up their own copy, and the price point was pretty low also. So like it's so simple, and the drama that game adds, because you're just trying to put cards down from 1 to 100 in order, but like the intensity that can come from like not being able to communicate because it's supposed to be silent, and you're just like, do I have the 13? Like that kind of drama is huge, and it's so hilarious even if you're just looking on. So I find that it's a highly engaging game, cute price point, and easy to teach. So
Great. Elizabeth, wrap it up.
Another easy, small game. Like I just taught my 80-year-old parents to play it this summer. Illusion by Wolfgang Warsh is a game that has all of these colorful patterns on the cards. Many of them are based on optical illusions. And you have to put, on your turn, you draw one card and you have to put it in order with all the other cards that are on the table in terms of how much of the face of the card is a certain color. So you might be putting them all in order according to how much of the face of the card is red. But there are things about the design that will really throw you off. And so like at some point someone will call it and say, I think something here is wrong.
Oh, interesting.
And if they're right, they get a point, and you'll flip them over. And sometimes it's just like, how does that have more red than that card? It's just like,
oh, that sounds really fun.
Yeah. So the rules are super simple, easy to learn. If you want a game that's like a good example of a hobby board game with a board, you can't go wrong with Ticket to Ride.
Oh, Ticket to Ride, yeah. I do that, and I love Splendor because I ordered my own custom jewels for Splendor, and that was one I just picked up off the shelf. I was like, that looks interesting. No recommendation, and those are always wonderful. I'm sorry that we're running a little late, but thank you all of you for being here. Thank you for the audience for being here and supporting our charity, takethis.org. Can each of you tell everybody where they can find your products and where they can follow you online, starting with Susan?
I'm Idea Duck on Twitter, and you can find them. Actually, everything is at mindware.com. That's the publisher that has all of my games.
Yay. And Corkle is an amazing game. You guys, all these women have amazing stuff. Elizabeth, where can people find you?
On Twitter and my website, they're both Eliz Hargrave. I didn't write out my whole long name, so ELIZ Hargrave.com for my website, and that's my Twitter handle as well.
And Wingspan is her game. Pick it up. Victoria, how do people get, I'm going to go buy Gladius right now. So how do we get that game? And also, where do we follow you online?
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter. It's Victoria Kanya. That's my Twitter handle. My company is also Cat Quartet Games. So there's a website and Twitter there. And I also design indie digital games that are usually free with the Mini Bunnies. So we actually won a game jam today. We got first place.
I just saw that. I saw that on your Twitter.
Did?
Congratulations.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
So cool.
If you like free video games, we have a game called Hazel the Plant Witch that I think I tweeted today. So check
Amazing.
it out there.
Amazing. I want to check it out. It looked really cute. For
Oh,
Tessa, where
thanks.
can people find you and what should they pick up that you've made or are going to make soon?
So you can find me on Twitter at Fortessa, just my name. I update that constantly. For my first board game, Book of Villainy, you can check that out with Gold Seal Games. That's who it is. Check out that publisher and they'll have that information listed on BGG soon. Wicked and Wise is with Weird Giraffe Games. So if you check out Weird Giraffe's website, you can find it there. And Breaking Games has Mansplaining. So they will have the next updates. But again, just follow Cortessa and you'll get updates from me.
Thank you so much for your time, you guys, and for your talent. Amazing. Next week, guys, we are going to be doing voiceover actors, however they prefer being referred to. I go back and forth as actress, actor. Kari Walgren, Jennifer Hale, Tara Platt, and Erica Ishii will be joining us. So I'm very excited for that discussion. And thank you for watching. See you guys later. Bye.